Welcome back to Into the Paradox, everyone. Today we're diving into a topic that's been sensationalized in countless movies, books, and even urban legends, the voodoo doll. Specifically, we're going to explore the often shocking idea of incorporating human remains into these objects. It's a heavy subject, I know, but we have an incredible panel here to help us unpack it. Tom, Alicia, Matthew, thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here, Peter. Certainly a topic that's ripe for misunderstanding, especially given the historical narratives and cultural portrayals.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to clarify some of those misunderstandings, especially when it comes to Voodoo itself, which is so often conflated with these sensationalized concepts.
And I'm excited to lend a perspective on the mechanics of intent and energy when dealing with such powerful focus objects. The what if is always fascinating, isn't it?
Absolutely, Matthew. So, Alicia, let's start with you. The very phrase voodoo doll often conjures images of pins and curses. Can you set the record straight on what a voodoo doll in its traditional sense actually is or isn't?
Of course. It's crucial to understand that the voodoo doll as depicted in pop culture, the one used for malicious intent with pins, that's largely a Hollywood construct. It's not a central or even common part of traditional Voodoo practice. Voodoo is a beautiful, life-affirming spiritual path focused on connecting with the law, or spirits, for guidance, healing, protection, and community well-being. We use offerings, prayers, rituals, songs, and drums. We connect directly with the divine. The idea of a doll for hexing, that's just not us.
And I think that's where the crime and occult specialist part of my title often comes into play. We see cases or hear stories where people believe they've been cursed by such a doll, often leading to real psychological distress, even though the source isn't authentic voodoo. It's the power of belief, for good or ill, that's at play there.
Yeah, the intention and belief of the person performing the ritual, however misguided, definitely imbues any object with a certain energy, whether it's a doll, a candle, or even just a thought. But from a magical perspective, a truly effective magical object generally requires a deeper connection than just sticking a pin in something and hoping for the worst.
That's a really important distinction, Matthew. So, if traditional Voodoo doesn't use these dolls in the way we commonly understand, where does the idea of incorporating something like human remains, say bones or ashes, into such an object come from? It feels like a very potent, almost taboo concept.
It certainly does. And again, to reiterate, traditional Voodoo does not typically involve the use of bones, ashes, or physical votive objects in this manner. Our connection to ancestors is paramount, yes, and we honor them deeply, but that connection is spiritual, through prayer and veneration, not through the physical manipulation of their remains in a doll. That would be seen as disrespectful, even sacrilegious, to many within our faith.
From a purely human perspective, the idea of incorporating human remains speaks to a very primal desire for power, connection, or control. Throughout history, various cultures have used relics, bones, or ashes in spiritual or magical contexts. It taps into that universal human fascination with life, death, and what lies beyond. But the legal and ethical ramifications of acquiring and using human remains are, of course, immense and complex.
Exactly. From a magical practitioner's viewpoint, the idea is clear. You're looking for an undeniably potent connection. A piece of someone's physical body, particularly bones or ashes, carries an incredible energetic signature. It's like having a direct line, a superconductor for your intention. It's not about malice for malice's sake. It's about amplifying the connection to the person or entity you're working with, whether for healing, protection, or even, yes, baneful magic, though that's a path many wise practitioners avoid.
That's a fascinating distinction, Matthew. It's about the potency, not necessarily the malice in every case. So let's explore this what-if scenario, purely hypothetically, as an exercise in understanding this extreme end of magical theory. Imagine someone, for whatever reason, felt compelled to create a doll using bones and cremated ashes. We're talking about a kind of construct. Alicia, from your understanding of spiritual connection, what would be the immediate spiritual red flags or considerations for someone even contemplating such a thing, outside of traditional Voodoo?
My immediate thought, Peter, would be respect and consent. If you were to consider such a thing, and let me be absolutely clear, this is outside of what we do. The spiritual integrity, the very fabric of such a practice, would hinge on deep respect for the deceased and, if possible, their express permission or the permission of their next of kin. Without that, you're not honoring the spirit, you're attempting to bind or manipulate it, and that, in any spiritual tradition, carries immense karmic weight and spiritual risk. You're inviting something into your life that you may not be able to control, something that may not have your best intentions at heart. It's like building a house without a foundation.
And from a legal and ethical standpoint, that's where things get extremely murky. Obtaining human remains, even ashes, without proper authorization can be illegal. Desecration of remains is a serious offence. Beyond that, the psychological impact on anyone involved, or even just aware of such a practice, could be deeply disturbing. It crosses a line for most people, legally, ethically, and morally. It ventures into a realm that feels like a violation of human dignity, even in death.
I agree with Alicia on the consent and respect, absolutely crucial. Even for a warlock working with raw power, you never want to force a spirit or a connection. It's about invitation, alignment, and shared purpose. If you're using bones or ashes, you're not just getting a piece of DNA, you're tapping into the lingering energetic echo of that person's entire life, their personality, their struggles, their unresolved issues. If you don't approach that with reverence and clear intent, you're just opening yourself up to chaos. It's like trying to navigate a dense jungle without a map or a guide. You can get seriously lost, or worse, become possessed by energies you can't manage. The idea of securing components with resin or adhesive, as a hypothetical method suggests, it speaks to making the bond permanent. That's a huge commitment.
That's a chilling thought, Matthew, inviting chaos. So, let's say someone with all the proper permissions and respect, hypothetically again, decided to embark on this. The instructions suggest preparing the bones, mixing ashes with glue or resin, creating a fabric body, stuffing with bones, incorporating ashes onto specific body parts like the chest or head, and then consecrating the doll. What's the magical or spiritual logic in your various fields behind these specific steps?
From a Voodoo perspective, the logic of creating a humanoid shape and placing parts in symbolic locations, like the heart or head, is understandable in many cultures. It's an act of sympathetic magic, like affects like. But our dolls, if you can even call them that, are often symbolic representations, spirit houses, or altars, not literal bodies to be manipulated. We might create a doll for a loi and point or point, but it's an object of veneration, a focus point for connection, filled with herbs and sacred items, not human remains. The idea of consecration, however, is universal across spiritual practices. It's the act of inviting the divine or the spirit into the object, giving it purpose and life. But again, the nature of that life would be entirely dependent on the intent and respect behind its creation.
From a psychological perspective, these steps are incredibly ritualistic. The cleaning of bones, the careful mixing of ashes, the sewing of the body, these are all acts that require focus, intention, and a deep emotional investment. This process alone could be deeply therapeutic or deeply disturbing, depending on the individual's state of mind and purpose. It's a very deliberate act of creation, imbuing the object with meaning at every step. This isn't just a haphazard craft, it's a profound, if unconventional, act of self-expression or spiritual seeking.
Yeah, Tom's right. The ritualistic nature is the magic in many ways. You're building a focus, a conduit, preparing the bones, cleaning them, maybe painting symbols. That's about purification and intention setting. Mixing ashes with resin, that's about binding and making the connection permanent, solidifying the essence of the deceased into the doll. Placing them in specific locations like the heart for emotion, the head for thought, hands for action, that's creating a magical anatomy, a symbolic body that mirrors the real one, making the energetic link incredibly precise. And embellishments like bead eyes, an embroidered mouth, a figurine, those are about giving it a face, a personality, making it a distinct entity. Consecration, as Alicia mentioned, is the ignition, the lighting up of the circuit, giving it direction. It's all about focus and power.
So it's about amplifying the spiritual connection, creating a very strong, almost literal, energetic link. Matthew, you mentioned the distinction between healing, protection, or baneful magic. What would be the intended purpose or result someone might be seeking with such a potent, perhaps even dangerous construct?
Well, the possibilities are as varied as human desires, but with such a powerful anchor, the intent would likely be very focused. If it's a loved one, it could be a perpetual memorial, a way to maintain a perceived connection, to offer ongoing prayers or blessings. It could be for guidance, a kind of direct oracle. For protection, it could be a ward, channeling the protective spirit of the ancestor. And yes, if someone were walking a darker path, the potency could theoretically be used for malicious purposes, to inflict harm or bind someone. But that's where the ethical red flag flags become absolutely blinding. The blowback from such an act, the karmic recoil, would be severe. Most serious practitioners steer clear of that. The doll becomes a living prayer, essentially, a highly personalized altar.
Mathew highlights a critical point: the blowback. In Voodoo, we speak of the importance of living in balance, respecting the spirits and each other. To use someone's remains, even hypothetically, to harm another, or to bind a spirit against its will, would create immense imbalance. It would draw negative attention from the law, from the ancestors, and from the universe itself. The purpose of such a doll, if it were to serve a positive function, would need to be in absolute alignment with the well-being of all involved, and the spirit's peaceful continuation. Anything less would be a perversion of spiritual power.
And this brings us back to the human element. The very act of creating such an object, regardless of the magic involved, speaks to a desperate need. A need for control over loss, a desire to circumvent the finality of death, or perhaps a profound grief or even obsession. These are powerful human emotions that, when channeled into such a ritual, can have very real psychological consequences for the creator, regardless of whether the doll works in a magical sense. It could be a way of processing grief, or it could be a very unhealthy obsession taking physical form. It's truly a spectrum of human experience and spiritual belief, isn't it? From profound veneration to something potentially deeply disturbing. Alicia, as someone who practices Voodoo, how do you manage the pervasive misconceptions, especially when these kinds of extreme hypotheticals are brought up?
It's challenging, Peter, but it's why I speak about it. It's about education. When people hear voodoo doll with human remains, they instantly think dark magic or curses. My role is to gently correct that narrative, to show that voodoo is about community, healing, family, and a respectful connection with the divine and our ancestors. It's a path of service and growth. The sensationalized versions only serve to demonize an ancient, beautiful, and vibrant spiritual tradition. We honor the dead. We don't exploit them. We seek harmony, not chaos or control through manipulation. I think it's important to remember that true magical practice, even outside of established religions like Voodoo, is fundamentally about self-awareness and responsibility. If you're going to work with something as potent as human remains, you need to understand not just the mechanics, but the deep ethical and spiritual implications. It's not a game, it's a profound commitment of energy and intent, and it demands respect for all beings, living and dead. There are easier, safer, and equally effective ways to work with energy if one's intent is positive.
And that's the bottom line for me as well. Whether you believe in magic or not, the respect for human dignity, the law, and the emotional well-being of others should always be paramount. The paradox of this topic is that something so deeply rooted in spiritual belief can also, through misunderstanding or misuse, become a source of real-world harm, fear, and even criminality. It's a constant reminder to approach such subjects with both an open mind and a critical one.
That's a powerful thought to end on, Tom. Respect, consent, and understanding seem to be the unifying themes, regardless of tradition or belief system. We've certainly delved into some intense territory today, but I think we've also managed to shed light on a subject often shrouded in darkness and misinformation. Alicia, Mathew, Tom, thank you all for sharing your invaluable insights on this truly captivating and complex topic.
Thank you, Peter. It was an honor to be here and to speak truthfully about Voodoo.
My pleasure. Always good to explore the boundaries of what's possible and what's responsible.
Thanks for having me, Peter. A truly thought-provoking discussion.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Into the Paradox. Remember to always seek knowledge, question assumptions, and approach every mystery with an open heart and a discerning mind. We'll catch you next time.